within just 48 hours. PTE. Ready when you are.
Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to another session here at Australia X Day 2. So a big welcome to today's English language testing myth-busting session. We've been really looking forward to this session with our Australia X partners, PTE Academic. I will now pass it over to them to introduce themselves.
Thanks so much, Alex. Good morning and good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us today for this session. I think firstly, I'd like to thank the team at Insider Guides for all of the fantastic work that you guys have done in terms of delivering Australia X alongside of us. It's all you, Alex. I do hope that all of you have had the chance to join some of our sessions on Tuesday, as well as obviously we've got a couple more today, as well as this session, obviously. But back to the task at hand. PTE Academic Mythbusters, I think this is one of our newest webinar sessions where I think we've run one or two of them already, and they've been very, one time, thank you, Derya. They've been very popular in terms of, I guess, demystifying or busting those myths that are out there in the marketplace about our exam. My name is Joe Hernandez. I'm the Asia Pacific Regional Manager for the Pearson Test of English, and today I'll be joined by my colleague, Derya. Derya, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, my name is Derya Uysal, and I'm the Client Services and Training Specialist for PTE Academic. And I've been with the PTE Academic team for about 3 years, just over 3 years now. And prior to that, I used to work as an English language teacher overseas. So I was a teacher in South Korea and in Turkey. And I've worked with students who are learning English in language schools and also university test prep. So hopefully I can give you some little insights about PTE Academic. We've also, just so you know, we've got some prizes today. We've got 4 practice tests to give away. So please stick around to the end and we'll announce who has won those practice tests. And also, we've got our chat box open. So if you have any questions or if you have any comments throughout the session, just feel free to pop them into the chat box and we'll answer them either within the chat or we'll save them to the end and answer them all together. All right. I'm just going to get our presentation deck up and running, so just give me one moment. Okay.
Thank you very much, Derya. Guys, just on those questions, please put them in the Q&A box, not in the chat box.
Oh, sorry.
No
My apologies.
problem.
I'm just going to change it. Okay, just making sure you can see that, Joe.
I can see that. Thank you so much. Let's move on to the first slide.
Okay.
So a little bit about us in terms of Pearson Test of English. For those of you not familiar with us, we are the leading computer-based English language test for visa applications, student visa applications, as well as for professional registration and skills assessment here in Australia. What makes us unique is that apart from being completely computer delivered, the marking of the test is also done by artificial intelligence, which provides consistency and accuracy and objectivity with test results. Move on to the next slide, please, Dee. We are recognized across the globe, not only here in Australia and New Zealand. As you can see there, a number of institutions around North America, the European region, and also in Asia. Next slide. But I guess in terms of the importance of the Australian and New Zealand context, this is what you'd be using the test for as potentially an international student or an international student that has graduated and looking to progress onto a different pathway. We're approved by the Department of Home Affairs for all visa categories. Similarly with Immigration New Zealand, all of the universities in our region here in Australia and New Zealand, and a number of the professional bodies, as I mentioned, for registration and skills assessment. Next slide, Dee. The basics. It's approximately a 3-hour test. I've already explained that it's computer delivered as well. There is no human intervention on the day. We're testing 4 skills: speaking, writing, reading, and listening. And the score scale is a little bit different to some of those in the marketplace where we're scored granularly from 10 to 90 on the global scale of English. Now, next slide. I think we're getting into the meat of things now, Derya, in terms of our session. So let's start busting some of those myths.
So this is the kind of thing that you sometimes hear someone say, you know, I'm taking PTE and my friend told me this. So this is the type of thing that we're going to talk about today. Sorry,
Great.
For some reason, I'm not able to click. There we go. So firstly, I just wanted to talk a little bit about myths and misconceptions and where they come from. You know, you hear things from people. So a lot of the time it's word of mouth. Like I said, you know, your friend might tell you something, or word of mouth these days could be not just talking to each other, but also the internet and the digital world. We have a lot of chat, a lot of forums, webinars, websites where these kinds of things get spread from person to person. So someone may read something online and then they'll tell their friend who tells their friend, and so on and so forth. Also, PTE Academic and a lot of English proficiency tests are high stakes in nature, so there's a lot relying on them and for the person who's taking the test, and you know, you want to get as much information as you possibly can. So that's why you're talking to people or you're going on those forums to have a look at what information is out there. And of course, you know, as it's a very important test, you want to get the most accurate information possible. Lastly, this is another little point of it is, you know, again, because these tests are high stakes, there are some people who are looking to hack the test. And I think even in our session on Tuesday, that was mentioned, you know, trying to hack the test, or as I've called it here, test gaming. So sometimes if someone takes the test and thinks, oh, that worked for me, you know, so maybe everybody should do this, may not be correct. So this can happen, and we want to try and clear some of those myths and misconceptions today.
Thanks, Derya. I won't actually get into some of those. I've already got some responses in my head in terms of some of the myths around this stuff, but yeah, let's crack on.
Yeah. Okay, so myth 1.
Drum roll. All right, myth number 1, Derya. Shouting or speaking loudly during the test will improve your speaking scores.
So this is something I've heard multiple times from people on different sites, and from some of the questions that we're asked when we talk to people as well. You know, if I speak loudly, will I score better on my speaking section of the test? Well, I would say no. Shouting or even speaking very loudly is a very bad idea. This can be for a number of reasons. It can change your vocal tone. So when we shout or when we speak really loudly, it kind of makes us sound a little bit angry, or it can be a little bit harsh, right? I mean, when I'm talking now, this is just my normal speaking voice, but if I was to shout all this, you can kind of see like your face kind of scrunches, your mouth gets a little bit wide, and it can mean that sometimes it changes the pronunciation of certain words. You know, your mouth will physically get bigger, and you may overemphasize something that you don't need to. So this can have an impact on your scores. You know, things like word stress and the way we say words is important to our pronunciation. And another big thing is it's distracting to others. So I know you know this, Joe, that, you know, PTE Academic is taken in a test centre, and in that test centre there are a number of people, right? So it's really important for people to know when they go to the test centre that there are going to be a number of people in the room with them, but there are partitions between each person. And you do hear the sound of some of the other people speaking, but that shouldn't impact your speaking score if you speak at a regular volume level, right?
Yeah, that's right. It's almost like a murmur that you're hearing around you. Remembering when I took the test, it was... yeah, it was quite surprising having everyone around me, but then at the same time, task at hand, it is just kind of a little bit of white noise that's around you. Well, that's the way that I felt anyway.
Yeah, you need to be aware of that noise, but then focus essentially on what you're doing. And so I think it's important for people to know that before they take the test, so they're not surprised, and so that they don't think, "Oh, I should shout." Yeah.
It's funny that you should say with the change of the vocal tone as well, because I find that when I try to speak too loudly, it's almost like my voice breaks, or it kind of gets a little bit lighter, and people do find it difficult hearing me.
And it's hard to keep up. I don't think you can really maintain that level of volume for a long period of time. So and I definitely would say the last point on this is, here we go. Speak at a normal conversational level as you would to a friend that you're speaking with.
Yeah.
Right? We always have a little bit of a way that we describe this to people, right, Joe? We say that, imagine that you're sitting in a cafe with a friend, and in that cafe you've got a lot of people around you, but you're only talking to the friend in front of you. So that's the way that that's the example I would use for people.
Yeah. No, it's a really good example, because I think it's that moment that you start deviating your, I guess you start getting distracted from what's in front of you. Even when you're speaking to someone at a cafe or a restaurant, you're suddenly then able to pick up, or almost at the point of eavesdropping in my
that background noise is there, but then the minute you kind of get distracted, you focus in on someone else, but you need to focus on the person in front of you.
Yeah. And I think the other important thing as well, Derya, that we should let everyone know is that if you are in the test center environment, there is a way to, I guess, raise your hand or flag with the test administrator that, potentially people around you are talking too loudly or shouting. So yeah, we encourage that, right?
That is a great point, actually. I was going to mention that too. Yeah, you're right. I remember when I took my PTE Academic test, the test administrator said, please don't speak too loudly, you will distract others. And if you speak too loudly, I will come over and tap on your shoulder and ask you to stop. So that'll be a distraction for you if you're speaking loudly. And yeah, like you said, if someone is being too loud around you, you just raise your hand. The test center administrator will come over and, points to the person who you think needs to slow down or speak a little lower. Yeah, so just a normal conversational volume is good.
Right.
Let's move on to myth. Oh, no, we have one more video. Sorry, I forgot about this. Speaking is really important during the test, and many people try to focus on, well, how should I approach the speaking section of my test? And I've got a little video here that gives you some examples. So I just want to play this one for you.
Did she call while I was out? There are three basic ways in which a story might be told to someone. There are three basic ways in a story might be told to someone.
Dinner was delicious. Dinner was delicious. Dinner was delicious. Come to my office after class if you need help. Our supervisor will leave your call as soon as he can.
We stop there. Perfect. So yeah, that's some examples of some do's and don'ts with the speaking section. I'm actually going to just off the top of my head use this as a plug. We have some a new course from Macquarie University in Future Learn. So if you're interested in PTE Academic speaking skills, I might pop that link into the chat session a little later, so you can have a look at it in your own time.
So I know I'm very much on that last bit of video, touching the microphone too much. I do that now using Zoom and Teams a lot now. I find that I'm always touching it, and yeah, it's a really bad habit to have.
All right, on to myth 2.
Let's do this. Okay, this one's an interesting one. I have heard this one through a number of different communities and different agents from different countries as well, that women score lower than men, especially on the speaking part of the test. Derya.
Yeah, the speaking part is really, really important. So the PTE Academic scoring engines were trained on a variety of people, I think over 10,000 people in the first instance. So people from a variety of locations, both male and female, different age ranges. So we've used a whole different set of people. So everyone should be scored equally on their skills. And actually, if we have a look, this is some data that we've collected over last year, so 2019, of male and female scores. So if you have a look, I know it's a little bit difficult to see, but we've got the blue line, which has the female overall scores, and then we've got the grey line, which is the male overall scores. So the female overall scores are a little bit higher, and the two lines above that are our female speaking scores and male speaking scores. And again, the female scores are just a little bit higher, and actually all of these scores are really within a small fraction of each other. It's a really small margin, and that's over a certain period. And these types of things, as our data sets grow and as we look at different time periods, they can go up and down. So again, this is something that could change, but in the past, we've seen that actually it's quite close.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, looking at that data, they're looking at that graph. It is fairly close. So it is a mystery sometimes to me when I hear this particular myth. Yeah. Whether it be from agents or whether it's from test takers itself.
Yeah. And I think sometimes, you know, different tests, some people say, oh, my writing's really, you know, the thing that I need to work on. And some people say, oh, it's the speaking. So for each individual, you find there are areas that you've got, you know, you need to improve, and there are areas that you excel in.
Yeah. Really good point. Yeah.
So a test tip is, again, practice, speaking practice. Like I mentioned, we've actually just recently launched a PTE Academic online course, or we call it a MOOC. So it's an online course with Macquarie University, and it's free, and it's on the Future Learn platform. So if you're looking to practice your speaking skills, that's a really great resource that you can access. It's a really great idea to record your speaking. Sometimes you think, oh, I sound fantastic. You know, in my head, I sound fantastic. But maybe if you record that and then even give it to a friend to listen to, or if you're already part of a language course, pass it on to your teacher to get some feedback. And there are actually a lot of different resources that you can find online these days to help with pronunciation or to work on your speaking skills. Even I know a lot of the times I was doing a quick Google search of a word, and I found that Google now gives you the definition of the word and the pronunciation of the word, which is a really great way for you to practice, you know, repeating a new word that you're unfamiliar with.
Yeah, no, that's really great advice. And I think just going back to the second tip you have there in terms of recording your speaking as well, it's something that I'm doing more now in terms of presentations, because I think obviously with COVID we're not able to do face-to-face events anymore, and a lot of the presentations are on Zoom and Teams now, so it's quite different not being able to engage with people. And I like to walk around and move when I deliver seminars or presentations, so being able to record stuff and watching myself back has helped me, I guess, improve my delivery, and you know, that includes my pronunciation and my speech patterns as well, in terms of not going too quickly.
Yeah, 100%. I know it's really difficult to listen back to yourself. I personally hate listening to myself.
Yeah.
But as more and more of these sessions are recorded, like you said, you do pick up on the little traits and the little things that you always do and that you can change. Yeah. Really good. Okay, right. On to myth 3.
Number 3.
So we're moving on from speaking.
Wow. Here we go. Yes, I've seen this one as well. I've seen this one on the internet. I've seen providers, should I say, with this as well. Answering with a memorized script or a template will get you a better score. This one's busted. Totally.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah. I think again, this could apply to speaking, but I think it applies more to writing.
Yeah.
And I would say, no, script memorization won't get you a higher score. Firstly, because you don't know whether the script that you have memorized actually answers the question prompt. So how do you know if it will be a match? You know, PTE Academic has a lot of questions and they're all randomized. It doesn't allow you to fully engage with the question. Like I said, it won't meet the prompt. If the question asks you to look at 2 areas and your prompt that you've memorized only looks at 1, then you're not getting as many points for that item as you could. Also, it's very difficult for someone to memorize a full text. Imagine if you're memorizing a 300-word essay, or creating a short summary of a text. It's very difficult to do because you might have to do 3 or 4 of these. Again, and each question is different. So it's really not something. It will score negatively on your content. The grammar of the text may not be appropriate. It may not be correct. So really, you just got to go in there and give it your best with the question prompts that you're provided.
Yeah, I guess in terms of the way that our test is delivered as well, as I mentioned, it's all computer-based. You mentioned in their randomized test form. So to give everyone some insight, if there were 10 of us in a test center right now taking the test, while the question types will be similar, the actual questions themselves will be different on every screen. So even from that perspective of kind of peering around and having a look at what someone else is writing, it's not going to correlate to what is being asked of you on your screen as well.
So I can't look over my shoulder and see what you're doing.
Well, I would suggest that you wouldn't do that anyway, Derya. I think I'd be getting more advice from you rather than the other way around.
Good to know. So the test tip is, while it's not good to memorize a full script or a full answer, it is useful to learn phrases and strategies for structuring your responses. So this is what's going to help you. If you're doing a describe image, you can have an introductory sentence. This graph is showing, for example, or this diagram shows. Have a concluding sentence. In conclusion, this is what I want to explain. So these kinds of structures, same thing for your essay, using certain phrases can be helpful as long as they're used correctly. So this is something that can definitely be worked on and improved, and something that all students who are learning English can do. And these are useful phrases that you will also use when you're studying at university and you're writing that report for your class.
Yeah, I think it's important as well. You touched on the content that you're providing as well. It's great to have all those structures put in place. But if you're not actually answering the question in front of you with the correct context or content, you're not going to score the maximum amount of points. And that goes with the speaking as well, right?
And I think that's a really good point that you make, because, we give you a question prompt and PTE Academic doesn't penalise you for using the words in the prompt, whereas other tests may do that. So you can use those words, but if you use those same words again and again, it's not going to do you very well. You need to try and use synonyms. You need to phrase things in different ways. You can't just cut and paste. It will not get you very far. Yeah.
Great advice. Wow.
Okay, moving on to myth 4.
Myth 4. We're flying through them.
I know, so I'll slow down on myself.
Oh wow! Okay, it's in a similar vein to the previous myth. I feel you can buy PT Academic questions and answers online. I'm going to say no, and Derya, you're going to give me the reasons why.
You're very right. These last myth 3 and myth 4 really do work together. People just don't memorize scripts on their own. It's not their own idea. They usually see this somewhere, and they usually see it somewhere like this. These are just a few Facebook posts that we found, and you can see that one's from 2018, but these come up quite frequently. We see them, and I wish we could stop them from happening. Yep. They're really giving test takers the wrong message.
Yeah.
So it's not the kind of message that we want to send out to people.
No, absolutely not. And I think it is about buyer beware with this stuff as well. As you're mentioning, it's the best way to prepare for this test is actually preparing for it properly, whether it's through the use of a MOOC, whether it's the Macquarie one, whether it's the Pearson one. There's a few out there at the moment, or connecting with a language school.
Yeah, and please don't go and spend your money. Like you said, buyer beware, don't spend your money on things like this. I wouldn't recommend that. And as you can see from below, we don't sell any of our item types to third-party organisations.
Yeah.
That would be unethical. And anytime we do see a leaked item, we will have it pulled from our item bank. So again, if you're memorising something, then you think it's going to be there, it won't.
Yeah.
We're held to quite a high standard by organisations and institutions, so we wouldn't do this.
Exactly right, and I think it's you know, the old adage that my dad used to say to me: if it's too good, if it looks too good to be true, it's probably not true. So once again, guys, it's buyer beware, and really go to trusted sources. You know, we do have. And I think, Derya, you'll touch on some of the preparation material that we have later on in this presentation, but go onto our website. There are reputable organisations that are delivering prep and language learning resources, including ourselves at Pearson. So I'd encourage you guys to go on there.
Yep, definitely. And that kind of is perfect because, you know, I didn't put that one here, but yeah, we do have a list of course providers in Australia and other parts of New Zealand and other parts of the world online. One of the online providers that we partner with is E2 Language, and you know, if anyone joined the session on Tuesday, you would have heard Jay talk about their prep. You know, we're happy to work with them because we know they do it in the right way. We also have our own official resources that people can use. We have our new our official guide. There may be an update coming on that one soon. We have Practice Test Plus that you can use if you want some more preparation questions to practice at home. And one of the best things that anyone can do is to take an online scored practice test. So that's a test that you can purchase online. It is a fraction of the cost of the actual PTE Academic test, and you can take it in your own home. And like we said earlier, we have 4 of them to give away today. Yeah. Right?
That's right.
You hear a lot about people taking practice tests, right? I always hear Joe saying, use the practice as your, don't take the full test as your practice, take the scored practice test at home, something like that.
Yeah, it really is. I think it's still happening now, speaking to a lot of students around the world, is the test taker, the behavior of going into the exam environment as a practice. Number one, you're not fully prepared. Number two, it's an expensive exercise as well, where when you're looking at potentially $300 and above to do that in order to get a feel for the test. What we'd rather you guys do is obviously look at the different practice materials that we have, and some of those are free on our website as well. But if you do want to, I guess, you know, have that simulation or you know, have a real look at what that test looks like before you get in there on test day, the scored online practice tests are really good. And they, I guess the bonus is as well with some of the practice tests that are out there from other providers is you need a teacher to mark them. Mm-hmm. With our exam, it actually runs through or uses the same automated technology as the real exams. So I think it's within 20 or 25 minutes, you'll get a result back. So you will know at what level you are and potentially where you need to improve on.
And you can use these at different, you know, parts of your preparation. You might want to do one at the beginning. And if you've booked your test, say 1 month out, 2 months out, then you can take another one towards the end.
Totally.
There are now 4 of them there for you to use. It takes us quite a while we wish we could have 100 sometimes, but it does take time because these tests are created by our test development team and our team that create content, so they're there to be used.
Yep. Number 5.
Apologies if you can hear some background noise. It's really windy in my neighbourhood at the moment.
It is over here as well, just to give you insight, guys. We're both in Melbourne.
We're both in Melbourne.
Myth number 5. Wow, okay, yeah. I've heard this one too. I've seen this one. I've tried to debunk this one myself as well, personally. Yeah. You'll get a better score if you go to a certain testing centre. I think this is a bit like the driving test analogy that we were talking about.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, there it is.
Use that picture. So, I mean, if you have a look, this is some information I found on the internet, you know, which is the best PTE test centre in Melbourne. Yeah. That's a funny question to ask. And like you said, the driving test. But let's think about PTE first. You know, PTE Academic every test centre gives someone the same test experience. As PT Academic is scored using our AI scoring and our algorithms, there is no scoring done at the test centre itself. So it shouldn't matter. It doesn't matter which test centre you visit. Anywhere in the world, your test is then being sent to another location virtually, being scored all centrally in one location, and then your scores are delivered to you. So, you won't get a higher or lower score if you go to a certain test centre. And our test centre administrators and staff, they're all centrally trained to the same standards as well.
Really good point, Derya. Really good point. I think that is where the objectivity and the consistency of our score comes from in terms of using that technology.
Yeah, I mean AI. That's the key reason. But using that photo of the driving test, the reason I actually put this one in is because I understand where it comes from. When you're taking a driving test and you have that human examiner there, I personally failed my driving test 3 times, so not something to be proud of. But I do recall my friends saying, well, the driving centre that you're going to, they're really tough.
Yeah.
So if you go to the one in the country, where the roads are a little bit quieter, you may actually pass your test. So I didn't do that in the end. I went to the same centre, believe it or not, and I finally passed on my fourth go. But I understand where this myth comes from. And I think, again, using AI scoring and not having that scoring in the centre makes every test the same.
Yeah, absolutely right. I passed on the first time out to the Warwick police station over in Perth. That wasn't the easiest place apparently, so I took that challenge upon myself there.
I'm actually an okay driver and I have not had any accidents, by the way, so
that's good to hear.
It was just nervousness.
Yeah,
there we go. Just give it a click. So really, when it comes to a test tip, it's a matter of finding the test centre that's closest to you and the most convenient. So what time and place works for you? Some of our testing centres, especially in places like Sydney and Melbourne, I mean, not Melbourne right now because we've got COVID restrictions, but generally, Melbourne, Sydney and Brisbane, we can have test centres that are running 3 to 4 sessions a day. There may be sessions on the weekends. So it's about trying to find one that works for you.
Yeah, that's right. And I think another important thing, guys, in terms of, your own test day experience as well, is finding the most convenient for you in terms of time, as Derya said, and location, if that's possible as well, if there's a test center near you. But it's also your prep before you get into the test center itself. I think, within our team, we've talked about likening it to going to the airport, making sure that you're not getting there 5 minutes before your test starts, because in some cases there could be up to 10 or 20 or 30 people that are taking the test on the same day, right? So you do want to get there with ample time so that you're not stressed out, you're not nervous. It's already a big day as it is in terms of the test day experience and what you're testing for. Alleviate some of that stress by planning ahead a little bit in terms of whether it's public transport or finding out if you're driving there, potentially where you're going to park, how long it's going to take you to get to the test center, to walk from that train station or from that car park as well. It's all of those little things that will just put your mind at ease when you step into the test environment. That's
a really good point. And you're right, you got to treat it like you're going to the airport. You pay thousands of dollars to fly somewhere, and I'm sure you take the time to figure out those little steps, and it should be the same. You want to be as prepared in all ways as you can be. Yeah, take some of those things away. Just make sure you get there on time. Make sure you've got the correct ID.
Well, that's the other one for the airport as well as Pearson Test of English. It's, for most part in all of our locations across the globe, the preferred ID is passport.
Yeah.
You turn up to the airport for an international flight without a passport, you're not going anywhere. And it's pretty much the same with us in terms of being able to test. If you don't have that ID, the correct ID, and importantly as well, guys, in terms of when you register, make sure all of your details match what's on the passport or the ID that you're providing.
Yeah, 100%. And if you have those questions, get in touch with our customer support team before you book. just in case. Just in case. It's always good to be prepared. All right. We're going to move on to myth 6. We've actually got 7, so this is our second last myth.
Okay. Very interesting one. Causes a lot of controversy, this one. Native or high proficiency speakers will get high scores without any preparation. Derya, bust this myth.
It's like thinking that just because I speak English, I'll automatically get 100 or 10 out of 10 or 90 out of 90 for PTE Academic. You know, now speaking in our scoring scale, you know, I should just walk in and get my 90. But I don't necessarily agree with that. And I think that all test takers, no matter who they are, where they come from, should prepare before taking PTE Academic. I like to use the driving analogy again for this one. You know, I speak English every day. I drive every day. But if I were to go back and take my driving tests again, would I drive the way I do now because I've been driving for like 15 years, or would I drive like I was that day on that very first driving test? So it's the same thing with our English. We use it every day, but we don't always answer those questions in those ways.
Yeah.
You know, we have to know how to answer the questions. We need to be familiarized with the items that we're going to take and know what we need to do in order to score well. Everybody should know that.
Yeah. I think as well, going back to a couple of myths where we were talking about content and the answers that you're providing as well. This plays a major part in it too, I guess, in terms of this myth where I speak English every day. It's my first language. I've got a degree. I should be able to ace this test. But if you're not answering the questions that are in front of you correctly, that will affect your score, right?
Exactly. You're exactly right. You know, if you go in there, and I think it was actually on Tuesday, there was a question about when I'm doing the described image item type, do I just need to say everything that's on that screen? You know, can I just say, that one is blue and that one's red and that the year is 2016 and it's talking about this? Like, if you just go in there and do that basic stuff, you're only going to get so far, but you need to know what you need to do to read and understand and explain that chart or graph and give a conclusion and give an implication. That's when you're going to get the best scores. And even a native speaker can go in there and not do that. Doesn't mean that they can't do that. It just means they didn't in that instance. They may not have prepared. They may not have known what to expect. I know the first time I did a read aloud item, I was like, it surprised me, you know, and I hadn't read aloud for such a long time that I wasn't prepared for it. But when I did a few, I got into the swing of things again. And I think that's what it's about.
Yeah, I think for me, my personal experience in taking the exam and not, I guess, preparing or putting in the correct steps in terms of being able to answer the question was the describe an image, where the image stays there for 40 seconds. And within the test guides, you are given a whiteboard and a erasable marker where you can start making some notes. So that particular question, you're given 40 seconds. So what you should be writing is 3 or 4 key points that you actually want to deliver content on or speak about. I didn't do that, thinking, well, I'm a native speaker. I know what this graph is about. And really, when the microphone turned on, that beep goes on, I crumbled. I just started stumbling over my words. I think one of the other tips that we had there was not to continually repeat what you're saying. I think I just found that I was repeating the same point 2 or 3 times, or, you know, a gap and then suddenly repeating it again. So it wasn't great, and it reflected on my speaking score,
and when
which
you
I won't tell you what it is.
No. Someone might ask. But when you panic, you start to go, and it's showing, you know, you get flustered, and everyone can do that. And it's also good to, I always like to say this to people, remember this test is called PTE Academic. It's an academic English test. So you need to use some of those great academic skills that you might use at university. So try and think of it a little bit more in that way. That personally helped me a little bit. When I write, you can write very generally, but you can put a few little bits of academic flair in there as well. Yeah,
and it's also the questions aren't, I guess, adaptive to what your occupation is. We don't know that. So, you know, if you are an engineer or have been studying engineering, if you're taking this test, don't expect that there's going to be a whole raft of engineering questions in there as well. So it does really keep you on your toes in terms of what is coming at you as questions. I'm not trying to say that it's the hardest test in the world, but just really be prepared to be answering questions or looking at content that maybe you're not super familiar with.
Well, yeah, and that again takes you back to preparation. You know, we use academic content, it's all authentic content. You can find similar things out there to read and look at, and just look at a broad range of things.
Yep.
Read the newspaper. One of our Practice Test Plus books has a great deal of practice items, and just looking at those items, just getting a read for them, and never think that, if you have a reading text and there are 3 or 4 words that you don't know, does not mean that you're doing badly. 70 out of those 80 words, that's still a great achievement. That's what it's about.
Yeah.
All right. So the test tip, as we've talked about, is preparation pathways. Every test taker has a different preparation journey, and I ask this sometimes in our other webinars. How long do you think you should prepare? How long should a person generally prepare for? Well, it's different for everybody. For me, it might be I need a week or 2. For you, it might be a couple of months. For others who are moving from an intermediate level to an advanced level, that can take a much longer time. That's a real journey. You're going through hundreds of hours of learning. So just think about, what scores do I need to achieve and where am I now?
That's a really good point, Derya, and I think you've answered a number of questions there in our Q&A, because I think people have rephrased that a number of ways in the Q&A section in terms of how long should I prepare with this test.
Yeah, we had one of our speakers, actually one of our Pearson speakers, a man called Bill Bonk, has a presentation about how many hours, and I think there's a paper about this, how many hours do I need in order to move from one level to another?
Yeah.
So, it's really surprising to think, how long it can take. And especially as you go to some more of those advanced levels, you might see, and I remember this from my days as a teacher, when we were starting off with the beginner students, they learnt so much so quickly, and then they got to this point where they stagnated, they stopped in the middle, and they found it really difficult to get a little further. But it's not because they can't, it just takes a bit longer. And it's some of those things that you think, if you learn a new word, how many times do you need to use or see or repeat that word in order to remember it? So yeah, just keep going with it, keep in there. And I say, if you want it, you will achieve it. Yeah, sounds like a motivational speaker now. Moving on. Sorry, just getting on to myth 7, our final myth.
No problem.
How are we doing with time? Yep, we're doing all right. I'm going to get to this one so we can get to the Q&A.
Oh, I feel a little attacked on this one.
It's a bit of a trick one. Yeah.
Pearson purposefully alters your scores so you miss the scores that you need by 1 or 2 points. Derya, are we that mean that we would do that?
And I feel for this one because, this is our PTE score report, and, if this person got a 74 and writing, but they needed that 79, I can understand it's a little bit disheartening to not get that score. It's a high stakes test. People put a lot of time and effort in. It means a lot to your future, but I can 100% say that we do not change scores in any way. We don't alter them using our algorithms. We don't alter them with humans. Every score goes through the same scoring engines, and it would be unethical if we did do something like that. And I think I said earlier that PTE and Pearson and a lot of other test providers are held to high esteem by governments, by institutions, universities. So it's really our responsibility to do the right thing, to give you the score that is accurately yours. That's really the gist of that one.
Yeah, and I also wanted, I guess, to debunk we'll call it myth 7.1, that we actually set the scores for particular universities or governments. Those are scores that are actually chosen by the institution or whether it's the government. So it's not us doing that. We're not petitioning for any scores to be higher or anything like that at all. So Yeah, I just wanted to get that one out in the open, that we're not responsible for that side of it. We're really
yeah, you're right. That's really good to point out. They do set those scores, and it's up to the institutions themselves to decide what they like. And we're happy to consult with them if they need a second opinion or want a bit of input from us.
Yeah.
But remember, these scores are a snapshot of your ability on that test, with those test items on that test day. And there are a lot of factors that are involved. And I think sometimes I like to say to people, if you've taken the test a couple of times and you haven't got that score you need, or you've taken it once and you've put in a little effort and you haven't improved, just stop and maybe think about how you need to improve that area before continuing.
Yeah.
That's my recommendation as a teacher.
No, I think it's a really good point. You say that because I think, one of my first weeks at Pearson, I spoke to a test taker that sat our exam twice in 1 week. And the complaint was my score hadn't changed in the matter of 4 days. And, the first question that was asked was, well, what did you do in between time to prepare to hopefully get a higher score? And they said nothing. I just booked the exam again and took the test. So again, back to what we've been saying for most of this session, it is about the preparation that you're putting in. Don't expect that because I've taken the test on Monday that magically I will get a higher score on Friday without doing any preparation.
Doesn't change from the day of the week, unfortunately.
Yeah.
All right, so one thing I would recommend is if you didn't get the scores you need, have a look at our score guide, because there could be some tips in there or some ideas in there of what you're missing, because we have, descriptions of what we're scoring you on. And like we said previously, take some time to improve and even join in class. If you've taken it a few times and you haven't got the score you need, then talking to a teacher, joining in class is really, really helpful. So I think we'll move on to our preparation resources just quickly. We've talked quite a bit about this, and after that we'll get to our questions.
Yeah.
So just a little bit about our preparation resources. There are 3 things that you can do, and they range from free and paid things. So we've got resources for all types of people. Firstly, I like to say familiarise, know what to expect. Like we said about know what to expect on test day, we have a great video that gives you information on that. And we also have free step-by-step guides for each item type. So these are great. We call them our preparation pathway. You see the item type, you see information on how it's scored. There are a couple of test tips as well. Now we also have an introduction to PTE Academic course on our website, and it's hosted by Jay from E2 Language. So that's a great one. So he goes again into each item type, gives a little bit more of his tips and ideas on how to approach that item, and that's also free. So that's a really good one. And again, don't think, well, I did the preparation pathway, or I don't need to do this one. Do this one too. The more you remember, the more you retain, the more you view. So it helps you to remember things. And another one is our online scored practice test. So we already talked about this one. We've got now 4 versions of this test. So they're available on our website to purchase. Good little tidbit here. You can go to our PTE, pearsonpte.com/preparation to find all our resources. And then we have other little things here. Like I said, our score guide is there for people to review. If you're a person who likes to be on their phone, you can download the PTE app. So we've got a PTE app with lots of questions and some tips and information on test day. You can be on the train or sitting having lunch somewhere and you can have a look at that. We have a test tips guide, so all of our test tips put into one place. And then if you need a course, you can find courses in your local area, or if there isn't one in your area, try E2 Language because they're online. Makes it a lot easier. They have a range of resources as well.
Great. I think another myth or misconception about Pearson Test of English is that we don't have a lot of preparation material out there. I think, I guess in comparison to other tests that have been around for 20, 30 years, that may be the case in terms of the number of different books that are out there. But I think for us, there's a growing catalogue of preparation resources that we have and different organisations that are developing these prep resource tools as well. So, and I think we're going to have a little bit more in that resource and preparation space by the end of the year, right?
Yeah, definitely. We've got more stuff coming out. I feel like we always have a flurry of new resources at the end of the year, so just keep an eye out. We'll give you some pages to follow in a bit. And just one other tip as a teacher, we have a lot of resources for PTE Academic, but Pearson also has a great deal of resources for English for academic purposes. And those are the skills that you need for a test like this. For English for academic purposes. Things like, how do I take notes? How do I create a summary? How do I structure my essay? Things like that. So those are the skills you're trying to improve, as well as your grammar and vocabulary.
Super.
Okay. So, as Joe was saying, you can keep up to date with some of these new products and any PT Academic information out there by following us on Facebook and LinkedIn. And if you need any more information or you need to book a test, you're ready to go, head to our website and you can book your test using your MyPTE account. Oh, and we have that 4 free tests. So we're going to draw that. I'm just going to leave it back up to Alex to maybe announce who we've got. And I'm going to put on the question screen and just bring up the chat. Actually, I might close this. I'm not sharing anymore.
I've got a few questions there anyway that are ready to go, Dee, from our Q&A.
Press the wrong. Stop. How do I stop sharing? Oh, stop share. There you go. Figured it out.
All right. Considering we've almost gone over time here because we usually deliver this in 40 minutes, right? I think we've done well in terms of delivering the session so far. I hope everyone has found it really helpful. We'll pick out a couple of questions, and I think this is one that really comes up a number of times, particularly for me working in markets like the Philippines, Indonesia, Singapore, and Thailand. Derya, should I speak with the accent of a native British or American speaker to get a better score?
Funnily enough, I just looked at the questions and went, oh, that's a good question. And it's actually one that came up the other day as well. And I think you do not need to speak with a foreign accent. It's not necessary for you to mimic a British or American accent. You just need to speak in your regular accent of English. Like we said, that this scoring algorithm has been trained on a large variety of people. It's about your pronunciation of words, not necessarily your accent. Okay, so not accent, but pronunciation.
Yeah.
And your pronunciation should just be easily understood. So if you're talking to Joe or I, and you're using your regular voice and you're saying the words, if we can understand them and what you're saying, then that's perfect. Yep. So like I said, if you're not sure about how to pronounce a certain word in English, go online and use either Google or I think a lot of dictionaries now do this to listen to how the word is said.
Yeah.
And that way, and how it's pronounced, and that's all you need to do. It's really difficult to maintain a fake accent. If I was going to try to speak like an American for this whole presentation, I probably couldn't do it.
We should try that for next time.
It would be really bad.
We should try that for next time and see if people can notice the difference. But this also goes with spelling, right? Because that's another question that's always asked.
Yeah, spelling's a different one because in PTE you can use either spelling conventions, British, American, Australian, but you need to be consistent. Not in the whole test, but you need to be consistent in each response. So, for example, I tend to use I tend to use a bit of mix of British and American, but if I'm taking the test and I'm going to stick to my British spelling for me personally because I use it more often, and I'm going to write words like behaviour or colour, and I'm going to use that OUR, but I'm going to always use it in that one response.
Yeah, great advice. We've got time for a couple more. Here's one that's, I guess there's 3 different or 4 different versions of this one. I've heard PTE is easier than IELTS. Is that true? How do I know which one to do?
This is a really tricky question, and I think it's really a personal choice. They are different tests. They're both English proficiency tests, but they're slightly different in their approach. I think sometimes people find it easier to take PTE because we have, you can book online, you can find a test centre close to you, you can take the test all in one day. So that's a convenient aspect of it. I think, in IELTS, you've got that face-to-face interview style of speaking. So some people might find that easier. They might find that easier because it's a bit more interactive. They think, but but others might go, oh, I like talking to the computer and I like that speaking approach where I have a task and I just need to complete it. We use integrated scoring with PTE. So that's one thing that really sets us apart. And I think you get multiple opportunities to show your skills. Yeah. So that's one thing that really makes us a bit different. And I think you're given many opportunities to do things in different areas. Yeah.
I think as well, it kind of leans into what we were talking about as far as our preparation materials and our online practice tests as well. The ability to take that test at home for practice to get a result as well. It provides you a couple of things that familiarization, which is extremely important when it comes to a test like this. And also, part of that familiarization is whether you do actually like delivering your answers using a keyboard rather than pen and paper. And, obviously there is no human interview section in Pearson Test of English. So how comfortable are you delivering content?
Exactly. And there's one other thing that I'll say is with human scoring, and I know this partially because of my own experience, is sometimes with human scoring, we don't always want to give someone the highest. Like we put the benchmark really high sometimes, or we set it really high, and it's really like we're sometimes a little reluctant to give someone a high score. And I think with PTE we don't have that reluctance because everyone's on the same level playing field. Yeah. Really good points. I think we've got time for one more because we're almost at the top of the hour. But this question is, there's one section of the test that I would need to listen to a short sentence and repeat it at the moment the microphone opens, the dreaded beep of the microphone opening. Despite the fact that English is my first language, I still find it rather challenging as it requires some mental memory. Do you have any tips on how to tackle that particular section? Thank you. It's a hard one. It's almost like you got that reluctance, But remember, okay, we have this thing in PTE called the 3-second rule, where if you don't speak for 3 seconds, the microphone will turn off. But I don't think, 3 seconds is actually a long time. So don't be put off by that because, again, I sometimes in the presentation, I'll stop talking for 3 seconds and you can tell how long it is. So even if that's a 1 second pause, you're okay. You might need that 1 second to kind of gather yourself. I think with an activity like repeat sentence, it's just about repeated practice. Repeated practice again and again. Hearing things and then repeating them back straight away, wherever you hear them. If you're watching a TV commercial, try it out. I often do that as well in terms of, I guess, as I mentioned, in terms of presentations now that we're using Zoom so much, where I don't want to be looking down at my notes the whole time. So it's just a little bit of that retraining in terms of, I guess, remembering and also use the other stuff that I use as well is just, as you said, TV commercials or podcasts as well that I use. I stop, I rewind, I try to then repeat what the person said and then do it again and again. So there's definitely ways that you can do that without having to, I guess, go to a language school or something of that nature to get your I've heard some of the other speakers that we've had previously talk about this. So many people these days are learning English in different ways that we wouldn't have conventionally thought was a way to learn English. You've got so many tools and resources at your disposal now. So just keep practicing. Great. Thank you so much, Derya. Really had fun on this one. I've seen the YouTube video of you and Melanie before, and it was a really fun session, to be honest with you, watching it, and it was fun being a part of it. I hope everyone has enjoyed the myth-busting session. Hopefully we'll have another one for you later on, maybe next year. There's plenty of myths out there that need to be busted, I think, so watch out. Alex, do you want to jump back in?
Sure thing. Thank you, both of you, for such a wonderful session, and thank you to all of our engaging attendees. There's been a flurry of activity in the chat box, and also thank you to everyone sending in their Q&A. Congratulations to the 4 winners as well. So I believe we've got all of your details, and yes, we hope you're looking forward to getting to use that. And that's everything. Again, thank you both so much, and we will catch you at the next Australia X session. Bye, everyone.